Hey everyone, it's Blake here from ChessPathways.com, and in today's video I want to show you a blitz game I played online where White played the very aggressive Shriov attack against the Caro-Kann, and you'll see how I handled it, how I was going to keep my bishop on the board even at the cost of a pawn sacrifice, and how it paid off in the end. So let's take a look. We have a Caro-Kann, e4, c6, d4, d5. White opts for the advanced variation, one of the most popular options to get an advantage against the Caro-Kann with White. I free that bishop from the pawn chain. Again, if you want to review any of the ideas here, definitely search my Caro-Kann video. Just type in Caro-Kann Chess Pathways, and you can watch my overview video on the whole Caro-Kann. So bishop f5, knight c3, e6, g4. Very common. Black gets this bishop out of the pawn chain, but White says that they're going to harass that bishop and kind of punish it for kind of being far away from the rest of its army. In theory, White should kind of own this part of the board, right? They have a space advantage on the king side, so it makes sense to harass this this bishop for kind of being in White's territory. So bishop g6, knight e2, and there's kind of that chess proverb that an attack on the flank is best met with an attack in the center. I don't want to let White run over me here. If White's going to focus on the flank, I should focus on the center and strike with c5 and break up this White pawn chain. That's a big downside to this knight being on c3. White can't reinforce this pawn chain or blow the center open with c4. So c5, this is the Shriov attack. And White has a couple follow-ups here. Bishop e3 is more flexible. It's kind of the move I'm more scared of, actually. But it's also popular here to play h4 and just really go after this bishop. And one of the points, and the reason that White played knight e2 first before playing this move, is that if White played this move first, h5 would just be really good. Here, their idea is to meet h5 with knight f4. And the reason, by the way, that h5 would have been good, let's go back a step. Let's back up. If White played h4 right away, after h5 they have no follow-up here. h5 kind of thwarts the whole idea. If they take, that doesn't make any sense, right? They split up their pawns, my bishop's not going to be harassed anymore there, it's just really good. If they push, they're never going to open the king side, and they give me f5 forever. I'm going to bring a knight right there. You know, it can sit there forever, it can't be kicked away, pressure the center. So h5 is kind of a good antidote here to g4. Kind of a very common theme in chess, too, that extended knight pawns get hit with rook pawns. We see this all the time, even in the Ruy Lopez, right? When Black has played b5, White looks to break with a4. Good theme to know. If your opponent extends that knight pawn, look to break with the rook pawn. It might be a good idea. Can't do it blindly, of course. Gotta calculate, but it's often a good candidate move to consider. But White plays knight e2 first, with the idea that if I play h5 now comes knight f4, and there's lots of pressure on the critical points here. If I back up the bishop, I lose a pawn. If I take, I get tripled pawns, and that's horrible, of course. So it looks like White's kind of making progress here on the king side. One of the important things to know about this line is that your bishop's a very, very strong piece, and it's often worth sacrificing this pawn to keep it on the board. So let's take a look. I played bishop h7. White accepts the pawn sacrifice. Knight takes h7. I played knight c6, increasing my pressure on the white center. Bishop e5 simply pinning the knight, makes sense. I played knight to e7, reinforcing it. And White has a pretty spectacular move here. It used to be one of the main lines in this line. White has a move here, bishop h6, if they want to. Think about how you would handle this with Black and what you would play here. Alright, so it's kind of a tricky idea, right? Because they add a second attacker to this g-pawn, and we certainly can't take the bishop because we get smothered mated with knight f6 checkmate, so you gotta be really careful. But this line kind of fell out of favor because it was decided that rook g8 is just actually pretty good for Black. White really has no clear follow-up here, and I'm just gonna continue trying to put pressure on this center with moves like queen b6 and stuff like that. So thankfully rook g8 exists, or else bishop h6 would be very strong here. So instead White decided on bishop e3 instead of bishop h6. But now I simply exchange, play a6, and White either has to give away the bishop and let a knight take its place, where it's very well placed. We see the bishop aiming at c2, d4 under attack, e5 under attack. There would already be a threat to, for example, take on c2 and deflect the queen away from the bishop, or possibly take on d4 first and then c2. But I have very good chances to win my pawn back, so White tries to keep this bishop on the board where it can guard c2, which makes sense. But now comes b5, knight takes, knight c6, and after queen e3, d4, and Black has a winning position. And we see how important it is that this bishop is so strong here on h7. If this bishop wasn't here, there could be, for example, queen e4 here, breaking the pin, or sorry, getting out of the fork, and kind of counterattacking the loose knight. But the bishop does a really, really good job. I guess we could call queen e3 a blunder, but the question is what else, right? If White doesn't play queen e3, I mean, they have to worry about the e5 pawn, they have to worry about c2 in some cases. Possibly queen d2 could be a better option, but again, it's very, very valuable to have this bishop here. d4 could still be considered. The knight really doesn't have a good home, can't come here. Taking on e5 could be considered. Maybe queen f4 could be considered here for white, trying to stop some of these ideas. Here I can't win either pawn right away, but simply queen c7, and black still has a very good position, despite being down a pawn still. e5 gets more pressure added to it, very, very hard to defend, plus the queen's kind of adding pressure to the c file as well. So the strong bishop pays off, despite white kind of being greedy and trying to pick up this h-pawn. Kind of the moral of the story here. So after queen e3, d4, queen f3, counterattacking the knight like I said, but the difference is this doesn't defend the e5 pawn, and I can simply play knight takes e5, and I keep my double attack on the queen and the knight. And after queen b7, takes, rook d1, simply queen c8, and white is kind of out of threats here. The game went on a while. I can show the finish. I take on b2. I kind of, remove the knight from being a thorn in my side here so I can develop the bishop. I play bishop g6 to kick it away. White probably shouldn't give in this easily, just letting me take on h4. f4, kind of desperation, trying to get something going, but now white's king is much less safe than mine. Rook f2, taking on g4, not winning the exchange right away. Again, got to be patient. Taking on g4 is better, just adding the second attacker. Knight e4, takes with a fork, and the game was over and white resigned. So if you want to play the Caro-Kann and your opponent responds with the aggressive Shriov attack, I hope some of these principles are going to help you out. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please click that subscribe button down below, and make sure you visit chesspathways.com and get signed up there too. It's totally free, only takes 5 seconds, and I'll send you a free move-by-move guide to chess thinking when you sign up. It took me way too long to become a chess master, and I want to help you do it in a fraction of the time. Thanks, and I will see you there.